I had this wave of fear come over my body. What happened out there? I mean, whoever it was could have just screamed because she saw a spider or something, but with the way that scream sounded, I knew something was wrong. I waited a few seconds before I opened the door to go out there, mentally preparing myself for the worst. I slowly creaked open my door. The scream sounded close, so there was a possibility of it being right outside my door. But there was nothing out there. Autumn's room was right across from mine, and she was in the same position as me, slowly peeking her head out of her door. So I assumed it wasn't her. She asked who that was, but I said that I didn't know. So with that, we both completely opened our doors and walked down the hallway towards the stairs. Autumn and I turned the corner to go down the stairs, and we saw Caroline's back facing us. I was confused as to why she was just standing there. She was so still. It was like she wasn't even breathing. As I turned my head to look at Autumn, I saw Logan sprinting out of the kitchen with a towel towards Caroline. It looked like she had just covered her hand with the towel. This made me feel slightly better, as Caroline didn't just scream for no reason at all. Autumn and I started taking steps downstairs, and we asked what happened on the way down. Caroline turned to look at us all, and the first thing I saw were her eyes that were filled with tears. This made my heart drop, not because of sadness, but because of shock. Caroline always acted so tough. The tears weren't even falling from her face, but they were just in her eyes, and that was so weird in itself. But this form of shock was nothing compared to what I saw next. This is FourFinger, the story of a group of friends finding out that their time left to live is limited, but it's done so in an unusual way. Chapter 3, the night of January 19th, 2003. After seeing Caroline's eyes, it quickly clicked in my head that something was wrong, shortly followed by my eyes looking down at her hand. The white towel that Logan had just brought in was completely covered in red. Autumn was quick to ask what happened again, but nothing came out of Caroline. Obviously, she was shocked, but once again, I had never seen her this speechless before. It took her a couple of minutes to calm down, and in that time, Autumn and I led her to the couches in the living room to sit down. Logan was frantically checking the windows, doors, and every closet that there was. I couldn't blame her for being frantic this time. Caroline obviously wouldn't do this to herself. I wanted to know how bad the bleeding situation was, but through the looks of the towel, I wasn't sure if I should ask. Once she had finally seemed to calm herself down, Logan had asked to see her hand again. I don't think I've mentioned before that Logan was a volunteer paramedic at one point, so this was why she was taking charge of the situation. In contrast to that, I had heard a rumor that she got kicked off. Don't ask me why, though. Caroline carefully took off the towel from her hand. Till this day, I cannot explain what I saw to its fullest potential. In the simplest terms, her finger was missing. But it wasn't like it was just the top of her finger or anything. No, it was her entire finger. Just gone. I didn't know what to do. Autumn screamed very similar to how Caroline did, and screamed the words "cover it up" over and over until she did. Since Caroline had calmed down, Logan had asked her once again what happened. Your guess is as good as mine. She said that everyone had went upstairs after we all walked through the door, but she had gotten ice cream from 7-Eleven, so she was going to put it in the freezer. She took it out of the plastic bag, walked towards the kitchen with it, and opened the freezer door to put it in. She said everything was normal. She threw the bag away and started walking out of the kitchen towards the stairs to go put her pajamas on like all the other girls were doing. She said she was just about to take her first step onto the stairs when she felt some numbness around her finger. It came out of nowhere, and when she went to look down at her hand, her finger was completely gone, and that's when she screamed. The next couple of minutes consisted of us conversing over what we should do next. I obviously suggested the hospital, because that seemed the most rational, right? But Autumn said the nearest hospital was a good 2 hours away, and she was right. I didn't even realize. But Logan said that the hospital wasn't worth it. She claimed that the bleeding was stopping, so there was no point, and I disagreed, but who was I to say? We came up with the idea of just getting a first aid kit and putting bandages over her non-existent finger. Dumbest idea I had ever heard of. The girl just lost a finger, and Logan demanded a first aid kit? Whatever. I volunteered to go get the first aid kit, but I obviously needed a car. Which had brought me to think, where was Maya throughout all of this? As I was standing up from the couch, I asked the group the same question, and they agreed with me. Did she not hear her scream or something? She had to. It was unbelievably loud. I decided that I would go up to her room and see if she was in there. As I started walking towards the stairs, I had thought of possible scenarios as to why she wasn't downstairs with us. Could she have fallen asleep? No way. One, it was still so early. I think it was like 5 o'clock-ish, and she woke up the latest. 2, who falls asleep that fast? 3, if she somehow was asleep, that scream had to have woken her up. When I got to the top of the stairs, I heard Autumn crying. See, I'm the type of girl who thinks people need to be tough in this world. I hate when people are constantly crying. I didn't really know how to feel throughout this whole situation. How does Caroline not know how she lost a finger? That makes no sense to me. But at the same time, what if someone somehow got in this house and did it to her? What if she got hurt too? Or what if she was just sleeping? Do I knock or just barge in? Out of instinct, I just knocked. I waited a good 10 seconds or so for an answer. I didn't get one. So I knocked again. Again, there was no answer. What else was there to do besides barge in at this point? Once again, out of impulse, I just figured I would open the door. My palms were so sweaty, but I put my hand on the doorknob and turned it very slowly while pushing the door open. I didn't know why I was so nervous, especially considering what I found. I had opened the door about halfway and poked my head into Maya's room. It was easy to see that she didn't hear anything that happened because she was listening to music. She had giant headphones around her ears, connected to a wire from her pocket that was holding her MP3 player. She was dancing around while mouthing the lyrics to whatever song she was listening to. She was taking clothes out of her suitcase, folding them and placing them in drawers. I called her name once, and she didn't respond, which now made sense as to why she didn't answer the door. I could hear the music through her headphones. I called her name again, almost screaming it this time, but she still didn't realize. At this point, I opened the door completely and went to go tap on her shoulder to get her attention. As I approached her, she quickly turned around to get something else from her suitcase on her bed when she saw me out of the corner of her eye. Her eyes got wide and jumped when she saw me. She said something along the lines of, "Geez, Christina, you scared me." I explained to her that I had knocked, but she didn't hear it. Following this, I asked her if she had heard Caroline scream, and she said no. She was trying to get herself organized. I briefly explained to her what had happened, but I figured it would be easier for her to just go and see for herself. When the two of us got to the bottom of the stairs, we found Logan wrapping Caroline's hand in a different towel, with Autumn watching. Maya saw her hand before she wrapped it, though, and she wasn't as shocked as the rest of us. I mean, yeah, she was obviously surprised, but not as surprised as you think someone would be when they quickly go upstairs for something and then come back downstairs a little while later and their friend's finger is completely gone. Maya and I put our coats on and told the other girls we were leaving to go get the first aid kit. As I opened the door to walk out, Maya asked the other three if they wanted anything else. But they said no, so we shut the door and walked towards the car. Considering the mystery that had just happened inside and we were in the middle of the woods when it's dark outside, let's just say I speed walked. I opened the door quickly and threw myself inside and closed the door. As Maya and I were driving down the dark road, we couldn't help but discuss the matters back at the cabin. She was confused as can be, and how could I blame her? She didn't even hear the scream. I assured her that I was in the same position as her. Seriously, how could this have happened? How could you possibly lose a finger like that? Knowing Caroline and how rebellious she was in high school, it really wouldn't surprise me if she was the type to just see if she could somehow rip her own finger off or something. But with that being said, even if she tried some other method, she obviously would have known what happened. Like I've said a million times now, this whole situation was weird. On top of this, what if someone snuck into the house and did this? Maya and I discussed all possible scenarios on the drive. Our conversation continued while walking into the 7-Eleven. We weren't even sure if Caroline was going to be okay. There was no way that bleeding was stopping. Maya had also mentioned that actually going to a professional doctor to hospital is a reasonable decision that any logical person would make. I don't know, I just wanted to go home. I opened the door to the 7-Eleven. Did 7-Eleven even have first aid kits? I didn't know. I asked Maya the same question, and she shrugged. So I walked up to the kid behind the counter to ask him. It was the same kid that was there when we were 2 hours ago. Man, I remember thinking that this kid has probably had the most uneventful 2 hours of his life, and yet our lives just completely changed. I asked if they carried first aid kits, and without looking up, he pointed to the back wall. That didn't really help me, but I said thanks anyways. I think he was reading the newspaper or something. I motioned for Maya to follow me, and we walked towards that back wall that he pointed towards. We walked through an aisle full of chips. In front of us was some fridges that were holding drinks. From there, we made a left to find a rack full of medicines. I walked towards it, but there was no first aid kit. Just things like ibuprofen and medicines that I had never heard of, nor could I even pronounce. There was no way this was legal. But upon further examination, I saw a first aid kit on the bottom shelf. They had 2 different sizes. Maya and I knew that considering we had a missing limb on our hands, we should probably get the bigger one. I had picked up the first aid kit and told Maya that I was going to pay for it. Maya said that she was going to use the bathroom, since the stand was right next to it. I said okay and walked up to the kid to pay for it. Once again, he never looked up, just scanned the thing and took my money. He handed me my change back, and I said thanks, but there was no response. I should have just stolen this too. I was annoyed that I didn't think of that at first. As I waited for Maya to get out of the bathroom, I just decided to roam the store. I didn't get to eat any of those snacks yet, so I was pretty hungry. I went through the chip aisle again. Wasn't in the mood for any of them, though. Ice cream sounded good. As I grazed over the ice cream, I had that stereotypical feeling that I was being watched. I've always been the type to brush off this feeling, so that's exactly what I did. I was thinking that maybe I wanted one of those hot dogs, and on my way over there is when I saw it, this creepy man glaring at me. I purposely didn't make eye contact with him, but I saw him out of the corner of my eye. There was one other person in the store, and they were checking out with the kid. There was no one else he could be looking at besides me. I carried on with browsing. At this point, I was over by the air fresheners. The last time I looked, the man was in the chip aisle. Geez, I wish I had a diagram that I could just show you to have this make more sense. So, the air fresheners were by the door. Bathroom was in the far right corner. Freezers and fridges were in front of the bathrooms. Does that make sense? Probably not. Well, whatever. Creepy dude was by the freezers at this point. And what was taking Maya so long? I wanted to go check on her, but I didn't really want to get near that guy. I also couldn't go out to the car, because I watched Maya lock her doors, and she had the keys. Thanks for listening to Chapter 3 of FourFinger. Tune in on December 10th to find out what Christina does next. Be sure to follow our Instagram at FourFinger Podcast to get some sneak peeks and behind the scenes of future episodes. While you're waiting for the next episode, be sure to check out podcast372.com for some more original student-produced podcasts.